welcome back to the Spare Room Talks. My name is Kareem. I have Amin here and our special guest, Mr. Hongbo.
Hi, Kareem.
The man, the myth, the
Thanks for
legend.
The man, the myth, the legend. Great to have you here.
Oh.
What are you doing here? You're wasting your time here with us.
Yeah.
I'm enjoy a cup of tea and water.
Okay.
You're a busy man. You're a busy man.
I think once the tea is over, like you're very welcome to go back to your daily priorities.
All right. I miss a Saturday, so
Huh?
It's a Saturday today.
Yeah, exactly.
Man. No, I appreciate you taking the time out of your Saturday, the one day that should be calmer than the rest, for you to come in here. It's really cool.
My pleasure, guys.
Perfect. Cool. So, I guess where we always like to start is for the people tuning in who may not know you from before, if you can just say a few words about yourself and what are you working on at the moment.
Sure. So I'm my last name is Sun, Hongbo Sun, and I came from China, and then 2011 was the first year I came to this country, and I studied in University College Dublin with a computer science major, and then I just always had this idea of building something on my own, and one of the biggest inspirations for myself is Steve Jobs. So, used to be always in China, I always question myself, why should I be alive? I wasn't a good student, to be honest
question.
with you. I kind of always like to play football, soccer, with my classmates rather than go to classrooms. And then I was just
Don't we all? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I was kind of thinking, why would I study so hard? If one day I'll be that, why don't I just enjoy my life?
Yeah,
So,
makes sense.
and then when I was 20, I think that was 2010. I just happened to watch a video from Steve Jobs, and really that just gave me a purpose of living. So I really want to do something that even after I die, people can still remember me. So
Something with
good
impact
for
that
the
would
world.
live. Yeah.
Exactly. So that was when everything began, and then over the years since I came here in 2011, I've been trying to get myself involved into as much activities as I can to develop multiple skills, and then finally by 2014. An opportunity came, and there is an event, I think now powered by Techstars. It's called Startup Weekend. So that's entrepreneurial event where participants go in there for weekends during 52 hours. They just try to develop an idea from nothing into something tangible. So that's where this all began.
I mean, I think you organized one of those at one point. Right?
Yeah, two of them
Yeah?
actually. Yeah, no, Startup Weekend. It's huge. I actually had no idea that you started off with Startup Weekend.
Yeah, I think the one I was in was the second edition. The first edition was in 2013.
The first ever was in 2013.
That was way
In
back.
Dublin. In
Wow.
Dublin.
Okay.
In 2013 and 2012, I wasn't really sure, but then the one I was in was quite early cohort, and then since then it's been growing quite a while, and now Techstars powered it.
Yeah.
Man, I have to
So-
say, you're obviously gonna share with us like how far this grew, obviously, and evolved. But I just want to pause and say I have so much respect for people who go to Startup Weekend. I've been to plenty before myself, both as a participant and as a mentor. I know you've organized one before. Many times people work on such great ideas. Unfortunately, once the weekend is over, they just go back to their normal lives.
That's right.
And for me, it's like a catch-22. It's like, and you ask them, did you have fun? And they're like, yeah, this is great. But for some reason, and maybe I'm generalizing, but for some reason they're like, yeah, but that will never really work, So what's the point of continuing?
It's almost like an escapism of sorts, You just do it for a little bit and see what could be. But what's really interesting, and like obviously we've all been to Startup Weekend, but I've noticed, especially when you go to a few of them or even just attend, you notice that there are a few familiar faces that go regularly, and part of me always wonders, well, is that because they just are doing this for a hobby and they're not serious about starting their own business, or are they just really passionate about the process and they're just waiting for the right sort of opportunity to do it?
That's
and
right.
Obviously, just by the numbers, people who go from an idea to where you are right now, like the numbers aren't too optimistic. It's a very small portion of people that do that. I know, like for Startup Weekends, less than 10% of all startups that go through Startup Weekend are still running as startups or businesses within 6 months.
That's higher than I thought.
Exactly, but it's not a great number. But like within 6 months, and obviously just drops off much quicker after that. So obviously you're going to go into more detail about it, but it's really fascinating to see how, because I know there may be a lot of criticism towards them saying that, oh, it's just very vague, very general, you won't get anywhere. But it's really interesting to see someone who is able to go from literally an idea to where you are right now.
Yeah, I mean, I was told at the time when we came up as the winner, more than 99% of all startups from the weekends ended up nowhere. And this is for various reasons you just spoke about.
The one more, did you say 99?
99%, yeah.
Of the winners or participants?
Of all participants, including the winners, ended up nowhere. So for various reasons, we had some difficulties after the weekend. We were 8 at the time, and then a bunch of great guys, eight of them. So you kind of if you go to a venture capital or a private investor telling them we're 8 founders, we all share equal equity, and then
we're a football team.
They're asking how much revenue you have, what the product it is. Well, we just came out the winner of that weekend. We had some early validation. They were how long you guys have been? Well, 3 days. So basically that's the reality. But then just as you said, if you are really determined to get started, I think it doesn't really matter if you came up as winner or not. You will always push ahead. That's just a platform for you to work together. And to be honest with you, I still think Startup Weekend is a great platform.
Of course.
For people who just want to get started, but then have no quite much of experience or just want to experience what it's like.
I think the goal of it is to really open your eyes.
And it funnels a lot into literally a 52-hour period.
Exactly. You go through the entire business model canvas, and then you go out to talk to customers, and then you never know. Came out of the weekend, you might just find your co-founder. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
A lot of people never ended up finding anyone to take on that journey.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah. So
fast forward to now. Where are you now?
Well, it's since 24. Like I was still a second-year student at the time, and then I, but really, since that's the whole purpose of what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I decided how can I graduate early? But then same as many traditional parents, there will be question you, they'll be ask you, what if you failed? What if this and that? And they without asking, you knew they would insist you to get a college degree for whatever reason that is.
Of course, yeah.
So what I did was, I tried to start extra hard and then graduated 1 year early. So rather than graduating 4 years, graduated 3 years. So by September 2015, I was officially leaving the college with honorary degree and then full time on this. At the time, we already received some funding from investors to take some.
Amazing. So actually, what were you studying in UCD?
Computer science.
So
I was trained to be a developer, so I had a future,
No, but that's already very intense as it is, and you're like, oh, I'll do it quicker. So it was an insane year. So that year, you basically combined 2 years together.
Well, it wasn't quite much like that, but essentially, there's a special program where you could once you reach out a certain criteria or requirements, you could do that. But what I did was, rather than just graduated, I wanted to convince my parents. So I actually ended up receiving an offer of master's degree in computer science in UCD. Wow. So, but I didn't pursue it. I chose to defer. But that's just something to,
it kept them happy.
To keep them happy, exactly.
Well, and it's a vote of confidence, of course, that hey, if I wanted to,
I could always go back,
there, and you can always go back as a fallback plan. And it's not it's not a fallback plan for
me. It's a fallback plan for
for many others potentially.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so we had a couple of so you're the CEO of Bond Flight, which was previously called Simply Fly. We've had a lot of questions about your story and your journey because I think a lot of people can really learn from that and at least get inspired or learn from that. And one thing that we always like to do is we try and get into the tactical stuff or the operational stuff. We feel like many times this is some of the stuff that would really give the most value. And to be honest, one of the first things we had in mind was what were the first, literally reading from here, what were the first 100 days like, and how did you, pivot from there? How did you grow from there?
Yeah, so the first 100 days really began by September 2015. That's when I officially began full time. Before, kind of between studies and then this. So
did you have since you're counting 100 days from then, you already had investors?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. We already had the investors. We already received some cash in the bank. So, but then the business we were doing was so the value proposition was Simplify was we were building a mobile application for global Apple shopping. So the idea is we aggregate duty-free items from various Apple locations to put into a single app and provide it to travelers who are requested to buy certain items in the airport for their loved ones, but then they just happen to have no time. Maybe for business travelers, that's actually majority audience. Mm-hmm. So that's the product we provided, and then for the solution for the product to work, we had to aggregate not just one but multiple locations, Apple locations.
Yeah.
So I ended up spending quite some money of the funding I received traveling around. So I was in Hong Kong, was in China, I was in multiple cities in
that must have been
Europe.
Fun.
Yeah, that was fun actually.
Traveling is part of research.
Yeah, but now not really. I was going multiple conferences, and then I always scheduled a meeting before. So there was one conference, 2 days. I think I scheduled 40 meetings in that 2 days.
Oh my
40 meetings. But then it's not like
40.
It's not like 1 hour a meeting. It was pretty much like 30 minutes and 20 minutes. But it's a joint conference where all of the relevant stakeholders and players are there. So I just
which is even more difficult to get it to get somewhere in 30 minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah, and doing that 40 times.
Yeah, that's right. but the good thing about it, they are all together, so I could basically
draw on the mindset.
Just go to the ground floor, meet a couple of them, and then first floor some other them. But what was interesting about it is you often heard those relatively low rates of low responding rates of cold emailing, but for me it's not the case. But I ended up sending 200 300 emails at the time.
Did that work?
But still 40 of them responded, so I got 40 minutes in schedules.
So that's a good trade-off.
Yeah, but I also happened to run into some others where I wasn't able to schedule a meeting. But anyways, that's something else. So
Right.
that's pretty much the first 100 days. So running across different conferences and trying to convince them to take on this.
Right, and those people, just to give an example, were those like decision makers?
Decision makers or influencers. Yeah, so pretty much they are.
Because I'm just thinking, I don't know anything about the aviation industry, but my and probably we'll get to this later on. I have the impression that it's quite closed off. It's not necessarily the easiest thing to get into.
Is.
Yes.
So what's an example of a decision maker there? What's an example of an influencer there?
A decision maker would be, director of commercial or the C-level, chief executive or chief commercial officer, or sometimes head of, revenue. That would work as well.
Right.
But essentially, in order to win a deal, as everybody knows, you really needed to convince that first person, and finding that first person was very difficult. Mm-hmm. And even now, I think about all of those meetings back in 2015, they were very rewarding. I learned a lot from it. We had a very pleasant conversation with many of the brightest minds over there. But not necessarily all of them were interested in taking the solution forward. Okay. Some of them were trying to learn what's out there and then how they could make it happen a different way. So pretty much like these days, you have accelerators or incubators that they are startups squirting. People go out there and trying to score what will be the best for them. So that would be the thing. But the first 100 days was pretty much that was very exciting. I never got to travel that much, and was great. But then if you ask me, how many of those meetings actually turned into tangible results? A few, better than none, but then a few. But that actually led us to that actually brought us to a product launch at the time in 2016.
Okay.
So
What were some? So I understand the part
yeah,
about not let's say most of them didn't necessarily turn into tangible results,
yeah,
but most definitely turned into insights in terms of how we should move forward from here.
definitely.
So what were those insights then?
What is like when you began, there was just an idea, and then you're trying to put into a product a very traditional way as you look into the business model canvas, trying to fill it out and improve it over time, maybe 20 times, 30 times until you're satisfied with it. And but then you just cannot really stay on paper since you run business.
Yeah.
But having me just been through those process really helped gather tons of information in terms of we cannot go this way because it's not compiling enough of a value proposition. The problems we thought they had, it turned out to be wrong. So we had to pivot. Well, this is what they are looking for. So how can we match our product to solve that problem? So essentially, how could we relentlessly focused on adding values to our partners or customers? So
Right, and the beauty of those 100 days
yeah,
is that you got to test those hypotheses with those decision makers and
that's right.
influencers on the field directly.
Yeah.
Right.
But it was a quite expensive way. If you thought about it, traveling all those countries, and then
Yeah.
It was worthwhile, I'd imagine, though.
it was worthwhile. But then if I think I could have done a different way.
The internet.
the internet, I could do a conference call.
Yeah, but it's very interesting though, because yes, in theory, obviously you're entirely convinced that what you're offering is something that will help them. So it's just a matter of reaching the gatekeepers and convincing them. And what's really fascinating there is this isn't like the airline industry. It's not something that anyone could easily access. It's not, a directly consumer-facing industry where you just launch a website and run a few Facebook ads and you'll reach. It's not that. You have to reach the customer through very specific gatekeepers.
That's right.
And assuming you started off 3 days, sure, you have some backing from investors. Where or how would you even go about reaching out to these people? And why would they bother, no offense obviously, but why would they bother wasting their time with someone who just has an idea? Because they're running a massive company, all
maybe
these things.
that's a good point.
Yeah,
like maybe they've heard several ideas.
Exactly.
Or several, on a first impression, several, new startups may have come to them.
Yeah.
What makes one different than the other?
That's right. So that's where a cold email. Well, if you go on YouTube, they teach you a lot about a lot of strategy and tactics about how to draft eye-catching cold email. So the key is really is to draft an email, a title that matches their interest, but then try not to tell too much details because that will
just to pique their interest, really, so that you
exactly
can have
just speak in their interest, and then all you're asking is 15-20 minutes. They are there. They are not going anywhere. They're essentially just asking 20 minutes of their time and telling them something, and that's how the first meeting should be. And I appreciate it a lot for all of the people I met during those 3 months of traveling. I think without them, many of them I'm still having a close relationship, but not necessarily into a business relationship, but a friendship. So that's yeah.
So you actually, not to cut you off, but like you actually spent a lot of time tailor making specific emails, and that was the main way you reached out to these gatekeepers.
Yeah.
Did you have, how sometimes people, for example, would already be working in a certain industry? I think we all know we all have examples of that, and maybe this applies to us as well. But you had a job working in a particular industry, and so naturally, when you make the leap and you start working on your own enterprise, you already have a few people in the industry that you can share ideas with, tap into, so on and so forth. But I feel like in your case, you saw an opportunity which was very, very objectively, you had no experience in the aviation industry or in the duty-free industry at all. Many times it would help if you mention someone's name, or you build brand by associating with somebody that they're like, oh, you're friends with this, that's my friend too, yeah, certainly we can have a meeting. I feel like you went from like absolute scratch, really.
That's right. I knew nobody
In a
that
really tough
industry.
industry.
Yeah. It was really tough. But then I think just don't be afraid to reach out to people.
Yeah.
At that stage, how many co-founders did you have? Because you said at the start of Pecan there's 8. Obviously, it wasn't.
So
16.
yeah. So we had a good conversation among 8 of us. We were just trying to bring everybody back to reality. We just won a weekend.
Sure.
That's the nonsense means
Back to reality, I like that.
all of us will be a billionaire in the next week. So the reality is you have to pay your rent. So you have a family to take care of. You have studies. So who else really wanted to dedicate their time into this, and who else still have other responsibilities? So in the end, we happily agreed. Well, I wanted to stay because that's my dream, and I always into aviation. And then 2 others just stayed with me.
Okay.
So we were. That's the early team to get started. So since then we've been growing. There were ups and downs here and there, but then I think that's just typical startup life. But just like when you grow into a large corporation, still have other challenges.
Yes.
But essentially, if I look back from that time until today, there's quite a lot of learnings and then a lot of challenges. But I think for any entrepreneur, a key here is to people may be tired of hearing never give up, but then that's really true. And I think for entrepreneur, the most difficult part is to get started. So once you get started, there's only one other secret sauce for anybody, which is to never give up.
Of course.
You got started, you got to stick to it. Say, you just got to believe this is going to work. And I think those are the only 2 things.
I think one thing to add here as well is being obsessed with not with the solution, but with the problem that you're trying to solve. And
I'm actually obsessed with the industry at first. That's how I got started. So that's just one particular industry. I was really fascinated about it. Want to do something good. And the second would be looking into a problem. This idea actually wasn't mine at the time. I was hosting a entrepreneurship event for Chinese people in Ireland, and then the setup was similar to Startup Weekend, but they kind of squeezed the 52 hours into 4 hours. That's what we did.
That's painful.
I obviously have to cut off many sessions, but it was during one of the brainstorming ideas. A attendee said, "Well, I had this problem where I was traveling from Ireland to JFK, and then my children asked me to buy certain stuff, and then my parents asked me to buy certain stuff in the airport, but I just happened to have no time." And I was thinking, why don't we build a mobile application? Why don't we build a digital solution? And I was pitching them, telling them this idea on the event. They were like, "This is great." And so that's where it all began. So
that's great. It's just really interesting to hear it in the first person from you. So I guess tied to that as well, we understand of course that through the successes of Simplify, you guys as well have relationships with big accounts, big clients. Again, back to this idea of the aviation industry being very closed off for somebody who's really looking to get into it for the first time. Not even just the aviation industry, but if we were to speak in general terms, how do you go after the big fish in a closed off industry from your experience?
I was really afraid, and I was quite often asking myself in the early days, what if company A or company B, the big fish, stole the idea and then ran away and built something within their own corporation.
With a bigger team, structure. Bigger budget.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then, over time, I mean, that's the same kind of thoughts for any first-time entrepreneur. But essentially, over time, you found that there's being a startup, you have many advantages over large corporations, just like you have many disadvantages.
Yes.
So one advantage would be you're more agile. You're able to make decisions faster versus large corporation. First of all, our idea was quite novel, right? So for novel idea to take into good shape, large corporation, everybody knows you have to report to your manager, and then they have to convince his boss and his boss's boss, and then get to board approval. All of that would take roughly minimum 2 years or so.
But if they're collaborating with a startup, wouldn't they expect a startup to have done like a similar level of research or followed a similar process so that they would apply it, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, in a startup company, that would be a similar process, but then with less people involved. So a startup of 3 people in the early days, and then you have 3 board members, maybe one yourself and 2 others independent, and maybe another independent, another advisor, investor. If you have no idea, you can always just ring them. You talk to your teammates first, and then you ring the other board members, and they'll be like, "This is great, Hongbo, get started." So that literally takes half a day.
Yeah.
You have a half a day, get
And you're
started
already
on something.
executing, yeah.
Exactly, we are already executing. Versus a large company, they have a big budget, they have a lot of people, but bear
they
in
can't
mind
move
that
as quickly.
those people all have a certain responsibilities. So, you have to pull them out at least a part of their daily responsibility to do something new.
Sure.
And
But certainly that's only one. I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. Surely that can't be the only benefit. Surely there were other benefits as well that helped
that's right.
you guys to really build those relationships and corporations.
Yeah, so I think for us and for any other successful business, one focus should always be, how could you add in value and more value to your customers. First of all, it's always the people. People deal with people. Do not ever, if you have a brilliant idea and then you have no sort of relationships with your customers, versus you just treat them like they are somebody who will pay for something, give you money, and then that's it. That will never work. So you first of all have to take care of them, just like you take care of your friends or maybe your wife, your husband. You have to take care of them very well. You have to always think for them. Do not really think for yourself. You should always put your customer at first.
Yes.
And then how can you relentlessly add in value and increase value over time? So that's how the first step began. And the second step, maybe also in parallel, would be how could you build a very attractive product. That's where Apple computers full focused on. They just always thought to build the best products on the market. They were never thinking, oh, I got to compete with Microsoft. Oh, I got to compete with IBM. They were just trying to build the best product.
Yeah, not building with this mindset of, this is going to be way better than my competitors, but rather this is going to be way better for my customers, for example, or just focusing on the customers at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Now, it's very easy of course, everybody always says, focusing on the customer. Whether people actually deliver on that or not, of course, is a whole nother piece. Do you find that having a knowledge of, this is a leading question, I guess, but do you find that you have to do research in terms of some of the core metrics of that company to understand how you can make it attractive for them as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, was funny at the time when we had the no sale, we've had no commitment from any customers. I was running around the city and then doing phone calls every single day, just trying to learn how could I make that first sale.
And who was this that you were trying to reach?
Just anyone. I would
From
go
like
on
the
LinkedIn.
airline.
Yeah, I would go on LinkedIn and try to find people with an impressive LinkedIn profile and just read them up.
Yeah. So in this case, would be more on the airline side or on the duty free side?
Both.
Okay.
On the airline side, on the duty free side, but also just in general, how could I make that first sale? And one advice that I always received, which I at the time thought ridiculous, was just do something and make them, just do not give them any reason to say no. And I was like, okay, well, that's
easier
nice.
said than done.
Yeah, how could I do that? I need the specifics. That's all nice. But essentially, just as you said, Kareem, for each customer, you got to treat them individually. You got to understand what are their objectives, what are their problems, not just today, but also in the future. So
Yes.
you have to be very specific. You have to think about the problems they have and answer questions for them before they even thought about those problems, those questions.
But how do you have access to somebody? So let's say airline X, for example. How do we know their specific, or like customer X? How do we know their specific problems which will really hit home for them, especially when by definition some of this stuff is not
Because
public or
it's
is more
such a closed off like industry as well. It's really hard.
because you
to
can always
access.
say something. You can always say something. I guess we're just trying to learn from you as much as possible. Like you can always say something vague about the industry, and they could say, "Oh yeah, well that's what everybody says." How do we say something that yes is true about the industry, but also true for me especially? And it's
Yeah.
like, wow, I can't ignore that anymore.
Exactly. So on our side, we had no relationships. We're just tiny startup or just getting started.
Yeah.
I mean, no startup should be tiny. They're just startup. So
Yeah.
you know a traditional way or many normal way where you go on you go online, you try to search press releases, read about them, and then you can never really understand their real problem without talking to them directly.
Yeah.
But then for over time, sometimes it'll be hard to secure that first meeting. So what you would do is you'd look up to you would check out if there is a relevant person who stayed with that company but ended up leaving, maybe retired or some other ways. So
Holy shit.
you would try to schedule
That's
that
pretty
meeting
clever. Yeah.
with that person, and then just to understand, you're not trying to do anything else but to try to understand.
Sure.
I have this product. I believe I could add in values to this company A, B, C, and D way. Do you think that's the case?
So this is someone who's already left.
Somebody who already left. Yeah, you are trying to talk general. Do not try to talk anything else, because
especially like you mentioned, I love the fact that you mentioned press releases, because that could give so much info.
Yes.
And it could say we don't need to have the answer, as we understand, we don't need to have the answers. We just need to have the right level of, let's say, curiosity. It's like it was mentioned so and so. We're obviously working in this space. We're looking to solve a similar problem. What
you're trying to help. You're just trying to help and try to understand whether the help would be a relevant help or it will be just a waste of everybody's time. So that's all you were trying to do. And then once you had that sense, you do your best to schedule the meeting. If you should never take a no for an answer, but then try to be nice, just to not be annoying.
So in this case, scheduling a meeting with this person who was maybe like an ex-employee or something.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
what's in it for that person? Let's say, like, just in an example off the top of your head, reaching out to someone who left airline X. How do you even go about reaching out to them? So would it be, let's say, finding them on LinkedIn and realizing they recently left this company, reaching out to them? What's in it for them? Why should they talk to you?
That's a great question, actually. And then, but
we should have a bell for when Emin asks a great question. It doesn't happen all. No.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh man.
No, but that's a great one. So, people often ask that, what's in it for me? What's in it for others? But when you're a startup, you have nothing. You have nothing to offer. All you can do is show your gratitude, show your appreciation. Try to say things from your heart. Do not try to fake it. And that's all you can do. Just go there with complete honesty and the integrity you're trying to learn from as an individual. Bear in mind, all of the successful people in the world receive the help from many others to help them get there.
Definitely.
So they all have a sense of appreciation and gratitude. They want to give back to the society.
So it's out of
to
goodwill,
help
mainly.
others.
Yeah,
exactly.
Especially when you approach them as hey, like, the reason I'm approaching is because you're clearly a subject matter expert in this. I would love some advice or feedback.
Exactly. Yeah. That's
because people naturally like to feel valued. So if you're going to someone as a source of information, chances are that they may actually help you out of goodwill.
That's right.
Without giving.
That's right. So just don't be afraid.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This is
gold.
Okay, so
I should ring a bell now.
Exactly. We should have a bell for good questions and good answers.
Yeah.
Okay, shifting gears a little bit. We understand that your team spans several locations. How do you go about building a team, and when does location or like kind of remote arrangements become a necessity? What's your thoughts on that?
I guess it is never really like in early days, we just happened to have a location in that specific country, and for two reasons. One is my co-founder was from that country, and the second, we had early clients in that country.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's actually the same to many of my fellow startup founders. They will
May I
have
ask what's the country?
it's a European country though.
Okay.
Okay.
And so for startup, I think now you wanted to have as many people as you can in one location that you can see and talk and communicate on a daily basis. But if you have a client based in different country, like us now, in the Middle East region, and then further in Asia, that's our growth plan. We're also trying to scale back to Europe since Brexit is coming in March 2019. Hopefully that will be the case. They do not get delayed anymore.
Yeah.
The duty free will finally return back to Europe. So if you fly from Ireland to UK, they'll be duty free. Now you have to fly outside European Union, the EU zone. So to answer your question, in the early days, we just happened to have that setup. It wasn't really done on purpose.
Okay.
And over time, once you figured out which location market really wanted to put the main focus over the next five years, saying 10 years for startup is too long, but then 5 years may be too long as well. That's when you put a headquarters or a regional office over there.
Because obviously you see all the big companies, the Googles, the LinkedIn's, the HubSpots, so on and so forth. Many times you can see them, of course, they're obviously very strategic about where they want to expand, where they want to set up. But I think what we're learning from you right now is that as a startup, this really doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Just get
it doesn't matter at all.
as long as you can do your work and you just kind of follow the flow.
Yeah.
Once you have more reason to invest in a particular location for I imagine for customers, but obviously, but also for talent or any other factors. What would you say those factors are actually?
The factors. Well, I just want to add in another piece.
Yeah.
You'll be different if you wanted to have a regional office for cost purpose. So you could actually build a team in India, a software development team, engineering team in India. It's more cost effective.
Yes.
Versus here you have to pay a lot for developer versus there is better. So that's a different sector. And I've seen many startups doing that way. But then bear in mind that the communication is key. You got to have somebody that you can communicate very well, get along very well, understand each other very well. Oftentimes, you talk to somebody, you don't really understand them quite well. You can be friends, but you can be, you can know each other, but it not necessarily means you understand each other.
What do you mean by understand each other?
Like when they say A, you understand as A. You don't.
Literally the language.
Literally not literally
like
language.
But the culture as well,
the culture as well. Yeah, exactly.
You have
the culture
same
as
common
well.
goal. And in the earlier days, how do you think about revenue versus cost? So one approach is let's just bring in as much revenue as possible.
Yeah.
And optimize our costs later. And then the other approach is no, let's build this with scalability in mind from day one, for example.
Yeah, you see, the definition for startup is a company who has potential to grow internationally and across borders. There's a fine difference between the definition of startup and a small business. Small business is a grocery store, for example, convenience store. So, but then to begin with the scalability at day one is quite of ambition.
And not necessary.
Not necessary. You haven't really proved a product market fit. You may have early product market fit, but then you're still adopting the market. You're still adopting the product to the market. So scalability wouldn't really matter that much. And often you hear people say, do things that are not scalable.
Yeah.
And then prove it, and then later on figure out how you can make it scalable.
Yeah.
And that's just the same idea for many of the greatest companies, Airbnb and all of those companies. So,
Starting
but
off
the revenue
locally
and the cost,
small.
you should always keep an eye on. You should always find ways to keep your cost down. I'm still learning. Actually, I'm learning every day how I can keep my cost down. For instance, something that I paid $2,000 today, I can get it done for $20. Just for example.
So I'm just making a quick conclusion here.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. is it correct to say let's bring the revenue in, let's focus on revenue as priority number one,
Yeah.
and cost can always cost and execution, this can always be discussed and reviewed
And improved.
Yeah, revenue is very important. You want to prove you want to
Demand.
validate
Yeah,
the market.
yeah.
That's very important. But then I wouldn't say cost will be the secondary. You got to watch out for it, but do not keep it too low. That would jeopardize your revenue growth. So, but then you want to watch out both at the same time. But certainly revenue will be number one. Yeah.
Yes.
No, makes sense.
Yeah.
So one thing, probably our last question, just keeping an eye on time there. So one of the things we are really like big on is, as a topic, is company brand versus personal brand, and we believe that personal brand is always an enabler to a company brand. If somebody has a personal, a likable or a relevant or a resonant personal brand, this many times has a direct impact on the company. So in your case, what are your thoughts on personal brand being a success factor?
I think personal brand is very important, especially for a startup founder. You're literally the face of that company. People, your clients would deal with you. You'll be the first entry, and then the public would look at you as well. So personal
the
brand
company doesn't have a reputation at all.
Exactly, the company doesn't really have a reputation. It's actually, oftentimes it's your reputation and then grow into your company.
Yes.
And so that's but for larger corporations, maybe company profile or picture is much more important. But for startups, certainly personal brand is more.
Right. Right.
I mean, the reality is people have to like you for them to work with you. If they don't like you anymore, if they don't even like you, they wouldn't do any business with you.
No matter how clever
Exactly.
you are, like it's just
Exactly. And building a personal brand is with the good characters is crucial. You good characters like honesty, integrity, and then always be specific. I made a big mistake in my early days. I thought that was very specific, but it turns out I was very fluffy. I was very fluffy about what I was doing at A, B, C, and D. But they asked me now. I could actually tell you what the specific really means. So that's quite important. Yeah.
So what would be an example of that?
An example would be, for instance, if a customer or a partner asks you a question, you need to understand what that question really is about, not just trying to say something that you think would answer those questions. I mean, oftentimes that'll be the case.
As in getting to the root cause of really where this is coming from.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, if you'll never get anywhere if you are always fluffy. People wouldn't trust you. People speak about the trust all the time, but the trust is built over time. So, as I said, there's just being specific is very important. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anything to add, Amin?
No, completely agree. And the fact that just building on the element of trust is really important, and it takes time to build. But even more importantly, it takes a few seconds to destroy.
Yeah, well, it literally does. You just, I think we've covered everything about that. But then, if you look at what we are doing now, Bonflight is a B2B2C solution. We pivoted from Simplify to Bonflight by Q4 2016 to take on a journey that we believe is more compelling and then more profitable and more scalable. We now literally offer, we partner directly with airlines and the airports based duty-free operators. So for end consumers, what we offer is if you travel from Dublin to JFK with a certain airline, you could pre-order duty-free from the airport location with the airline e-commerce website, the mobile application. You can do that pre-journey at home, pre-journey on your way to the airport, in the airport, in flight, on the aircraft, with your phone, post-flight in destination. Then you have a choice to receive your purchase item either at home or departure airport, departure flight, arrival airport to your hotel and destination, return flight. So essentially our end goal is to provide this ultimate convenience and value add to the end travelers.
And it's completely end-to-end. So if I'm going from
it's completely
A to B,
end-to-end. Exactly.
I can purchase things only from So I would have access to obviously the two
You
duty
have,
free
yes.
locations.
It can be
Yeah,
delivered
that's
to your
right.
house.
It can be delivered to your house.
So you go somewhere, you can order things on the way, and on the way back you order things, and both purchases are delivered to your house.
yeah,
This
Wow.
in itself is huge
Yeah.
because many times people's decision, and you probably have done your fair share of research on this, but many times people's purchase decisions are based on how much space they have,
that's right.
and you're
Yes.
eliminating that.
I mean, the traditional way, if you want to shop in duty free, if you want to shop duty free in the airport, is you either go there way early or you go there on time and
Yes.
trying to, get through the security as fast as you can. Then you reach out to the duty free store and then you're running around the store trying to find the specific item, and then it turns out it's not there. So you ask a store staff, where is that item? And then he or she spend 30 minutes or 20 minutes or 10 minutes get it pulled up for you. I'll be like, perfect. And you have to queue in the queue. You have to wait for 10 people in front of you, get to the queue, pay the money, get it back, carry it all the way to the boarding case, squeeze it into the seat, under the seat, and carry it all the way to destination. So there's just a whole lot
Or
of
you
hassle.
just miss your flight.
Or you just miss your flight, in the end. So
That's insane. So what do you think would be the main difference between that and Simplify?
well, Bond Flight, which is named now, would be you can do that shopping at any time rather than just on specific point. That specific point is in the airport. You can do that anytime you want on your phone, on the digital channels, on your laptop. It's multi-channel solution on desktop, and at any point throughout your travel itinerary. Once you've done that, you simply choose how you want to.
So
receive
before
it.
before the pivot, it wasn't as accessible.
Yeah, it
with
wasn't.
specific.
Before was we provide you an app, and that's Simplify branded app.
Yes.
You pre-order, you collect it either at home or at the airport, and then that's literally is. But now Boundflight's enterprise solution B2B2C, but we do it white label.
White label. Nice.
Yeah.
So airlines would be able to have that app as well,
Yeah,
and
airline
they'd
would
be
be
able
able to have
to
that,
to provide that experience under their own name
That's
for
right.
people who already associate with that brand and use that brand.
That's right. Yeah, I mean.
Huge.
At the end of the day, people trust the airline, right?
Yeah.
Versus you introduce a Simplify, I've never heard of that, And for me to put in my credit card for a $500 watch is a big bet. Even for $20 bets, I would think, oh, I got to delay my credit card because otherwise these guys may charge me for something else. Versus if you associate it with a bigger brand, people ultimately have that trust.
So if I want to use this service, I need to be
a traveler.
I need to be a traveler, and do I need to be traveling on an airline that works with this service?
That's right.
Okay, and is there a separate Bond Flight app or experience that I can use that's airline agnostic as well?
At the minute, no.
Okay.
So it's just completely B2B, and
Got it. Okay,
so-
cool.
That's
Right.
huge.
So in
Huge.
closing, do you have any? Is there anything that you wanted to share in terms of like the future? Any things you're exploring? Anything you're excited about?
What's up next for you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What's next? Yeah.
You see, I see myself, like first of all, I'm really into two things apart from space, where I always keep an eye on, and the two things be first of all solar energy. So, and second of all would be space exploration. I mean, solar is quite important, but then a huge burden is that nobody really wanted to damage their roof by installing a solar panel that really could just save them several cents. And if the solar wouldn't work, they have to find somebody to go onto their roof and damage everything, repair, and take it off. So there are certain challenges there, but one thing I always have in mind is solar has to work, has to be, and one solution would be solar of everything.
Okay.
I mean, I've heard of Internet of Everything.
Yes.
But solar of everything would be anything you see and touch would generate the power from sunshine. So
What's an example that's not an obvious example?
An example to be you see the
your
roads, you see the road outside. Rather than using the traditional materials, use solar panels. So everything you see and touch, even this building, on the outer layer is solar panels.
Every surface,
Every
surface area absorbs sun.
observes the sun, but not in the traditional, not in the form of a clunky solar panel. It could look exactly like it is. Maybe this microphone, it just looks like this, but it has this function of converting sunshine into electricity, into electrons. So that would be the ultimate efficiency for the solar panel. I mean, over time, Cambridge University introduced some new material that converts sunshine into electron more efficiently, but then that would come in 10 or 15 years time. But then before that happened, Tesla already pioneered that concept by designing
the roof tiles,
the
right?
roof tile,
Which is actually cheaper per tile than the actual roof tiling.
And they look stunning. They look good.
Exactly. Yeah, they look nice, and they're actually cheaper to install.
They look better sometimes.
They look better, but they're literally cheaper. So there's no reason for you not to.
Exactly, and maybe one day our clothes can do that as well. So when you go on to a road trip, your phone is that. You can find a way to charge it.
Would
with
everything
clothes.
be very hot then, seeing as it's absorbing sun?
Yeah, but that's more of a specific question. But on the other side, speaking of a concept, that's where I think could be very exciting. And space exploration would be a different path. And I think Blue Origin and SpaceX are building the infrastructures for a lot more exciting things to come. Like nowadays, building an internet company is relatively a lot cheaper than before. Now you have service.
Of course.
But the Amazon and the other guys really built that infrastructure to enable the platform. My view is Blue Origin and SpaceX, and they're actually another company in China, are doing just that. Imagine in the future, now today, we can do this draw in the universe on the orbit for $20.
Yeah.
For fraction of the cost.
Yeah.
And that will enable a whole new world of applications.
Fuck, man. I'm okay.
Yo.
That's it.
Yeah.
We weren't ready for this, Hongbo.
Yeah,
I think I don't know if it was you or somebody posted on LinkedIn that there's a lot of startups in the space space exploration industry coming out of China that are going after SpaceX.
Yeah. No, I did that actually. I posted 80 companies in China. Yeah, but the 10 of them are doing launch vehicles. So the other are technology associated with satellites.
Right.
But actually launching a rocket, 10 of them in China.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fascinating.
It's interesting because we live in a world where SpaceX is already seen as like a dinosaur or like SpaceX. It's time to disrupt SpaceX already.
NASA's something that's ancient now. NASA's like the pyramids now. It's ancient.
I mean, we were watching. Me and my wife were watching the movie First Man.
Yeah.
About the.
That's a great movie.
Yeah, it's an amazing movie. Yeah, Neil Armstrong. I mean, did you see it?
No, I missed it 3 times. No, once it was sold out. Second time it was booked out, and then the third time we just missed it.
It should still be, may still be there, but what was I going to say? Yeah, so maybe if you're like me, like after you watch a movie based on a true story, the first thing you do afterwards is you Google it and you go on Wikipedia and just like do more research on it. And I was really interested to learn that, and maybe no surprise, but basically, a regular iPhone, say whatever iPhone, even one of the older iPhones, say iPhone 6, actually has more power than the entire mission control team, which took folks to the moon and back.
Yeah, that was 1960s, I guess.
Yeah, and another example is Elon Musk. I hope I'm not getting this wrong. I think it's either 20 to 30. He launches 20 to 30 rockets. Was it up to 20 or 30 rockets a year, more or less, something like that?
Yeah.
And what's amazing is how much
at
you
least
could do it
12
for,
a year, which is
you could do it for nothing, a fraction of the cost.
Yeah,
and if someone out there can launch one rocket a month, you have no excuse for anything.
Yeah.
I mean, but to your point, it shows how the more people innovate, the more the cost goes down as well, and the more it becomes accessible for others.
Absolutely. I mean, like I couldn't really remember the exact figures that much, but essentially, for Elon Musk to take somebody into Mars, I think it would cost. I think less than 100 million, but then the proposal by Boeing was $10 billion. So you can look at the difference. And then now the cost for SpaceX to launch a rocket for NASA is 60 million, versus before was hundreds of millions of dollars. But still, if you look at the 6 million, it's still quite a lot of money for anyone to launch that kind of company. But then just believe, and I really, I'm really excited, and hopefully within 10 years time, people can launch space tech.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll have full on space, and it'd be interesting if something like this already exists, but entire like space accelerators,
exactly,
and co-working spaces, and
that's right.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves now. All right.
In the International Space Station.
Exactly.
You can imagine find a co-working space on Mars for folks working on product.
It's crazy. And going back to that point, you saying that 100 million and 60 million. Yeah, obviously they're insane figures, but if you were to think the percentage reduction in cost, if this trend keeps going, I mean, there's a lot there.
Hongbo, you are a very busy man. We really appreciate you taking the time today. It was very valuable, and thanks for having. Thanks. I was gonna say thanks for having us. Thanks for having us.
Literally, thanks.
But
for
also,
having
it was great to have you on the show, and we'll definitely stay in touch for the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me.
Oh, thanks.